Hey everybody, I'm your joyful host Matt, and you're listening to another episode of Flow Into Your Mind. I always enjoy sharing details about incredible music that people are missing out on. I think that most people hesitate to expand or explore beyond what they already feel comfortable listening to. On the contrary, I'm constantly looking for new things that I find exciting to listen to, so exploring rock and metal from around the world is something that I have lots of fun doing. A few months ago, during one of my international music adventures, I came across this band, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about them ever since. Today, it is my pleasure to tell you about Cartagena, a symphonic metal band from Tunis, Tunisia. Before getting too much further, I just want to say that I'm not fluent in Arabic or French. I know, shocking. So, I apologize in advance for any mispronunciation of people's names. Alright, let's get into the quick history about this amazing band, and I do mean quick. There are only a handful of sources with information about Cartagena, so I had to dig deep in order to find some details. Cartagena was formed in 2009 by singer Sherazad Amous, bassist Murad Besadok, drummer Sif Ketrid, and guitarist Shamsuddin Koki and Ahmed Mkaur. They produced a demo mini album titled Eternal Variation, which was released in 2010, and performed a small number of local shows. Then they seem to have kept quiet for about 6 years until vocalist Sherazad stepped away in 2017, and the band brought on a new singer, Nesreen Mabouli. During 2017, they worked on putting together their first complete album. I'm still unclear about which vocalist is featured on the album. Regardless, Cartagena's official debut album titled Roma delende Est released on January 26, 2018. The album was produced and released independently, and as of today, Cartagena has never been signed by any label. Due to the overwhelmingly positive response from fans, the band was noticed by the organizers of the female metal event, FEM, which has been hosted in the Netherlands since 2014. Brief side note, FEM is a metal festival focused especially on women vocalists and musicians in the heavy metal community, which I think is absolutely incredible for a genre that's primarily male-dominated. Cartagena performed at FEM in October of 2018. From what I was able to determine, everyone thoroughly enjoyed Cartagena's performance, with one comment I saw stating that they were, quote, the best show of the festival, end quote. As a matter of fact, they were invited back to perform at FEM again in 2019. By my count, only 8 artists ever returned to perform more than once at FEM. Another quick fun fact, Stream of Passion performed at FEM in 2015. Check out my episode about that band if you haven't already. In March of 2020, Cartagena announced on their Facebook page that they would donate 20% of all digital album purchases towards the global effort against COVID-19. They updated their Facebook profile picture and banner in 2021, and that is so far the last we've heard from Cartagena. According to all sources, the band is still active as of 2025, but I haven't come across any activity recently. Personally, I hope that the end is still far away for them because I really want to hear more of their music. And speaking of, let's dig into Cartagena's music style and this one epic album. Music and history. Two things that I am extremely passionate about. Seriously, I work at a museum and I listen to music every single day. Now, I know that there are plenty of bands out there that combine historic storytelling into their music, but I also think that there are lots of those artists who get overshadowed by the more popular ones. And, of course, by popular, I'm referring to Sabaton. I emphatically enjoy Sabaton. However, they are not the only band to retell history through their albums and songs. Cartagena is one of these obscure bands that wishes to immerse their listeners into a complex History Channel style documentary through their music. Their album Roma delende est translates to Rome Must Be Destroyed. It details pieces of the Punic Wars. If you're someone who never took an ancient history class, or forgot about the Punic Wars, or simply didn't pay attention to that part of world history, let me give you the brief synopsis. The Punic Wars were a series of 3 wars between the years of 264 BCE and 146 BCE, with a total of 43 years of warfare. The conflict was between the 2 preeminent powers of the Mediterranean Sea, the Carthaginian Empire and the Roman Republic. This album could be loosely interpreted as a concept album, with the story being told from the perspective of Carthage rather than Rome. History is remembered by the victors, after all. Actually, the title of the album is a reversal of the phrase Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed, which is how Cato the Elder famously concluded many of his speeches in the Roman Senate. To begin with here, I love the use of sound bites and samples that are infused into this album because it makes for a truly immersive listening experience. There are sounds of busy markets, rolling thunder, galloping horses, fires burning, people shouting, metallic armor clanging as soldiers and weapons collide. Such excellent production with what sounds like top-notch mixing and mastering. Plus, whoever spoke the narration for this intro should seriously consider working in the television or film industry. Like I mentioned, it feels like you could easily insert sections of this album into a documentary series about the Punic Wars on the History Channel or Discovery or National Geographic. And before I break down the unique details about Cartagena's instrumentation and musicality, I want to acknowledge that this is the first band I'm covering that has an album with an intro and an outro. The intro is called Prelude, and the outro is called, well, outro. That's fine. It doesn't have to have a dramatic title. Symphonic metal will often structure their music like classical symphonies or operas, with overtures, epilogues, interludes, movements, etc. Alright, I'm sure my sister won't mind me calling her out for a second here. She actually introduced me to K-pop a few years ago, and something that my sister and I often joke about are similarities between heavy metal and K-pop, 2 genres which should have nothing in common, but funny enough, they both tend to have intros, outros, skits and interludes, Japanese exclusive tracks or albums, fan sign events, fan chants, deluxe box sets. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Stay tuned for some possible bonus content about these similarities in the future. So, what is it about Cartagena's music that makes me and should make you want to listen? Well, according to the online magazine Global Metal Apocalypse, quote, by mixing together the traditional sounds of Tunisia and the wider Arabic world with symphonic metal, Cartagena delivers a stellar debut album, end quote. All of the sources that I've looked through are applauding the dynamic of Tunisian metal bands, and especially Cartagena, for proudly celebrating their cultural roots. In an interview with Dark Zen, singer Nisreen Mabouli said that their style features lots of classical and folk instruments, and uses scales and modes from different cultures, making it hard to classify. That's exactly what I've been saying, Nisreen. Music like this is tricky to sort into neat categories. She went on to say that the album has many typical elements that metalheads will enjoy, but at the same time the use of genuine classical instruments and traditional melodies make it gentle and pleasant for other listeners. I fully agree with Nisreen's analysis. She continued, quote, our inspirations, alongside everything beautiful about music in general, go all the way from history to cinema to literature to poetry to philosophy. End quote. Immediately after the prelude is the title track, which is an instrumental along with those various sound bites and samples that I previously mentioned mixed in. It conjures images of thousands of Carthaginian soldiers gearing up for war against Rome. It also feels supremely cinematic in the layering of the orchestral instruments, but the guitars and drums absolutely drive this track forward. It captures your attention to the point where you won't even realize that the song has a 6-minute runtime. If the next song, Glory, was any less heavy metal, I could easily mistake it for a song off the soundtrack for the video game Civilization, especially after the 3-minute mark. Now, the first song that I heard by Cartagena was Elephants and Wolves, which immediately piqued my interest. It's a masterful composition with elements of folk, symphonic, and progressive metal. Even better, the lyrics feature a unique layer of storytelling about how, for almost 250 years before the onset of the Punic Wars, Rome and Carthage were actually allies and recognized the difference of their interests. In attempting to control the Mediterranean Sea, Carthage was seeking purely economic gain, while Rome was hungry for land and manpower. Elephants and Wolves is not quite Plutarch's parallel lives, but I'd argue that it's Cartagena's parallel cities. Beyond that, the music is endlessly intriguing since there are so many North African and Arabian folk instruments involved. A few that I think I was able to identify include the mizwad, a style of bagpipes, the oud, which is similar to a lute, and the ney, which is a flute-like instrument carved from bamboo or another thick reed plant, but it could also be a different variation of flute like a koala or a gaspa, or even all three. Also, the previous song, Glory, totally features a marimba near the beginning. I love when a band can be stylistically cohesive while incorporating a vast amount of instruments. Although, with that said, let's move to the song after Elephants and Wolves, which has somewhat of a different cultural style. The next track, titled Liu Heng, takes us on a detour from the Mediterranean, down the Silk Road to the Far East. The title of the song was the personal name used by Emperor Wen of Han, who was the 5th emperor of the Han Dynasty in China. His reign was contained to the years in between the Second and Third Punic Wars. Naturally, to provide musical accompaniment for this departure from northern Africa, other folk instruments would need to be introduced. I believe I've narrowed it down to 4 traditional Chinese instruments, at least the 4 that I think I'm hearing. We have a dizi, which is also a style of flute made from bamboo, the erhu, which is a 2-stringed instrument played with a bow, a style of lute called a pipa, and the yangqin, which is very similar to a hammered dulcimer. Liu Heng is a wonderful piece of music, and I had already been listening to a few symphonic metal bands from China. This song made me immediately think of Misterain, another band that I have lots of excitement about one day sharing with everyone listening to this podcast. There is tremendous emotion felt when listening to the ballad Peaceful Sorrow, easily my favorite song from the album. It's one of those gentle ballads that really makes you stop to ponder for a moment. I legitimately do not believe that I can concentrate on anything but this song when it's playing. The piano, the harp, the cello, the flute, and the airy soprano vocals, everything about this song is overwhelmingly beautiful. If there's any singular song from Roma Delenda Est that you should all give a listen to, it must be Peaceful Sorrow. Let it take hold of you, and sorry, not sorry if it brings a tear to your eye. Motherland is, in my opinion, the most progressive metal of any of the songs from Cartagena. Somehow, it seems to lack in energy compared to earlier songs in the album. That said, you can certainly feel the tension and mood of the conflict, and recognize that Carthage is losing to Rome. Ultimately, we land at Progenies, which acknowledges the destruction of Carthage at the hands of Rome, but also gives the hope that Carthage will always remain a memory, so long as Tunis and Tunisia remain. I adore the mixture of Middle Eastern scales and rhythms featured in Progenies, and towards the end it almost emulates the band Dream Theater through unique polyrhythms. And then the outro ties a sweet symphonic bow around this enlightening album by a band that, sadly may never resurface. According to proghurst.co.uk, quote, Roma de Lende Est is as beautifully diverse as the historic Mediterranean cultures it features. If you decide to give it a try, it's worth your full attention. End quote. As I'm recording this, Cartagena has a mere 510 monthly listeners on Spotify, the lowest out of any band that I've talked about so far. Before I wrap up here, I just want to say that the team over at angrymetalguy.com made me an angry metal guy with their review of Cartagena. I'm not trying to start beef or anything, but those dudes, they definitely need their ears checked. So I'd like for all of you to take a listen to Cartagena. When you do, let me know. I'd really like to hear from you. Links to where you can find Cartagena are included in the description. Make sure that you follow the podcast so you never miss finding a hidden gem like this one. And until we meet again, let that good music flow into your mind.